Hello and welcome to Synchronicity Talk Radio for your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Marie Benard, and today we are joined by Mark Nepo. He has been breaking a path of spiritual inquiry for more than 40 years. He's the author of 18 books, including 7,000 Ways to Listen, The Endless Practice, and the #1 New York Times bestseller, The Book of Awakening. And he's also traveled across the country with Oprah Winfrey on her The Life You Want tour in 2014. He's been a guest on her Super Soul Sunday as well, and he has been inspiring and teaching. I first saw Mark Nepo in the movie The Power of the Heart. Mark is coming to Vancouver. He's going to be at Unity of Vancouver on March 24th as well as March 25th, and he's going to be in the rest of the West Coast. He'll be down in Southern California at Pine Manor on April 7th and 9th, and we'll talk more about that soon. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being with us. So you are going to, as listeners know, we like to start out with an intentional meditation, and you are going to be reading us one of your poems from The Way Under the Way.
Yeah, and this is a poem that's called To Be and Belong, and I'll read it as a meditation. I'll read it a little slowly, and I'll read it twice, just as a way for us to maybe open up a heart space. To be and belong. Let go your want for greatness and feel the tool that's in your hand. Let go your fear of emptiness and receive the wave still reaching from the beginning. It only wants to enliven you the way water refreshes every hole. So let the web of things entangle you. Only stars are free, and they are so lonely. Curse what you will, but give thanks that everything alive wants something from you. To be and belong. Let go your want for greatness and feel the tool that's in your hand. Let go your fear of emptiness and receive the wave still reaching from the beginning. It only wants to enliven you the way water refreshes every hole. So let the web of things entangle you. Only stars are free, and they are so lonely. Curse what you will, but give thanks that everything alive wants something from you.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Can we talk about that poem for a moment?
Talk about anything. Yeah. So, I think one of the things that has been humbling and so enlivening for me throughout my life, and I'm I'm 66 now, and in my 30s, people who are familiar with my work know I'm a long-term cancer survivor from times in my 30s, and I think one of the biggest gifts, hard gifts, and lessons from all of that being turned upside down and inside out was the realization, which is at the heart of all the spiritual traditions, that there's nowhere to go. That everything is right wherever we are. And we don't get engaged in life to get somewhere. We get engaged in life to come alive. So, we're not, we have such a conflict, and all generations have had this. It might be a little more in our generation because we're so out of balance with modern tools and technology, but we all have to balance being and becoming. And we talk a lot about being in our modern age because we're so out of balance with so much doing. But really you need you need healthy forms of both. It's like you can't walk with one leg, you need two legs to walk. And you need two eyes to have depth perception. And you need a healthy balance of being and becoming to be fully here. And so, one of the things I've learned over time in my life is that, when we say, or when I say that, there's nowhere to go, and it doesn't mean that we're not engaged and committed to making life for each other better. It means that we are tending the garden of wherever we are. And the reward for that is a fullness of relationship and our authenticity, which is kind of the tuning fork of oneness. The reward for authenticity and integrity is that, not that we achieve something, but that, like a tuning fork that's rung, we feel, not just understand, we feel the sense of oneness that's always around us. So yes, and let go your want for greatness. Just feel the tool that's in your hand. And let the web of things entangle you. Yes, it's frustrating and it's annoying, and we all need rhythms of solitude and community, and we can talk about that more deeply. But we're supposed to be a part of the tangle. We're supposed to be part of the web of life. So curse what you will, but give thanks that you're not as lonely and cold and isolated in the dark as a star. Give thanks that everything wants something from you, even though sometimes you go, all right, enough already.
Thank you, Mark. I'm wondering, you talk about the tool in your hand, and is that tool the tuning fork? What is the tool?
Well, the tool is anything. First off, we're the tuning fork. We are the tuning fork. And when we talk like this, or we experience great love or suffering, like a tuning fork, we are struck and we vibrate. And suddenly a deeper rhythm becomes apparent and rings through our entire being and connects us with everything. The tool is anything tangible or intangible. The tool is, it's having conversations like this. It's a trowel with which you garden. It's, whatever it is that we can make good use of. One of the final sections in the One Life We're Given is to be kind and useful. That once we're awake, once we're here, once we're connected, I think we're left with the noble, ordinary commitment to be kind and useful. And anything, it's picking up the groceries of someone who drops them in the parking lot, even though you don't know them. So that's your ability to show up is the tool. So the tool can be anything from your ability to hear and listen to an actual physical tool, a screwdriver or a knife that you would carve wood with.
Why do you think it is that our culture has so far deviated from this being and this kindness? It seems like almost, if you aren't constantly striving, if you aren't working 80 hours a week to achieve more money, it's almost like you're made to feel that you're lazy. So where do you think things changed for us, for humanity?
Well, I think first let's put it in a context that I do believe that this rhythm of, even the rhythm of opening and closing and the rhythm of expanding and contracting. As I'm talking to you, my lungs are expanding and contracting. Our eyes are blinking. I'm talking with my hands, and so my muscles are expanding and contracting. And likewise, the body of humanity is always expanding and contracting. So every generation from the beginning of time has had to deal with this. has had to deal with being drawn, and I would like to, and then we'll talk more about our particular time, but let's frame it in the endless archetypal uh, challenge which everyone has to face between surviving and thriving. Everyone who's ever lived and ever will live has to negotiate surviving and thriving. And surviving is mostly located in the outer world, where we navigate the weather of circumstance, which always comes at us. But if all you do is survive and never thrive, what's the point? And yet, you can't just thrive and not pay attention to surviving, because you won't last long. You and I could have this deep conversation if we're walking in the road and we're so engrossed that we don't pay attention, we get hit by a truck. Well, that's managing, the weather of circumstance. We've got to pay attention to both. And everybody has to find their own balance, just like we have a balance of X and Y chromosomes. Everybody has to find their own spiritual balance of the skills that help us survive and thrive. So now, given that, in our age, we have these wonderful, I love technology. I wouldn't want to give technology away, but because of the advancements and the progress that we have surrounding us, we're out of balance. You know, let's start with, just physically, to 150 years ago, before, I mean, my grandmother, who came from Russia, she died in 1987, but she was born in the late 1800s, like right around 1900. So in her lifetime, that generation, when she was a child, there were no cars, phones, electricity, planes, nothing. There were
Wow.
trains. Trains were in the middle 1800s started. And by the time she died, we'd put a man on the moon. We had phones, cell phones, computers. My God. So what happens is, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, when people living and surviving took care of your being in physical shape. So now we have progress. We don't have to cut wood every day to have a fire. We turn on a switch and the heat goes on. Great. I don't want to give that up. But that's why we all have gyms that we have to belong to, or we have to have exercise, or we jog, or, whatever it might be, so that we compensate. We need physical aerobic activity to compensate, because we've made progress that we no longer have to do these. Well, spiritually and emotionally, we are in need of spiritual aerobics to compensate for what progress does. So I'll give you, one example is, we have these amazing things. I can get on the computer and I can look and see the top of, Pikes Peak in the Rocky Mountains, and look at it's 360 degrees, even though I'm in my study. That's amazing. I love that. Because of that, we all can learn and go places we've never been physically. However, seeing that does not replace what happens to us, the journey of making the climb and looking out ourselves. Nothing takes the place. I don't want to give that up. It's better than not seeing it if I can never go there. But we make the mistake in our modern culture of thinking that, oh, that means I've done it. I've experienced it. When I haven't, I've been given a glimpse of it. And the same thing happens. I think this has affected and infected our politics, our relationships, the way that cyber reality, we start to think that actually substitutes for actual reality.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, Mark, you talk about the climbing to the peak of the mountain and having that experience. But these days with social media, so often we go and have that experience, but we don't fully experience it because we're so busy taking pictures to post on Instagram.
Well, exactly. And so even when we do it, and this is what brings up two things that are, and again, every part of the human journey is how to negotiate these things. It's just particularly acute in our age. And so, one is that, all the traditions speak about we need to be where we are. We need to be where we are. We need to not watch ourselves, but be in life. This raises, and then we'll move to a second thing, but this raises a very important thing that's particular not only to artists of all kinds, but to all of us in the way that we go. I started writing as a young man, as a teenager, really, and I mean, what started me writing was a broken heart. The first woman I fell in love with, and first loves are so big, and she, dumped me, and it broke my heart. And I wound up writing to see my way through that heartache because I didn't have really close friends till I was in college. I had a lot of acquaintances in high school, and after I started to heal from that, I discovered that I wasn't just talking to myself. I had begun a conversation with the universe through my heart and through my heartache. But once I realized that, so I wrote really because I would have moments of wonder, and writing was a way to try to have the moments of wonder last a little longer. Try to have what I was seeing stay visible a little longer. So what we really do when we're expressing ourselves or writing or dancing or painting or just being truly present to another in a conversation like we are right now, we are giving attention, not getting attention. It is giving attention that brings us alive, that connects us to everything that is alive. So, like you mentioned earlier, we're taught in the outer world, strive. We're taught to get attention, to get ahead. Well, by giving attention, you get a heart. By getting attention, you may get ahead. Now, again, there's the balance. There's nothing evil with getting attention if it's balanced. But when we devote ourselves to getting attention and we stop giving attention, we've lost the essence of what we're doing. We've lost the essence of what we're doing. And so when we, as you mentioned, today we're obsessed with taking selfies and doing all this. Well, what are we doing? We're getting attention. So much so that we've stopped giving attention to where we are and what's around us. And it's not the same experience. It's not the same experience. So, one of the other thing I was going to mention in conjunction with this is, and this is, one of the most insidious assumptions that keeps us from being fully present in life and to each other, is the menacing assumption that life is other than where we are. If we think it's over there. If only it was over there, look, they're having a better time. If I was only over there, and it prevents us from giving attention to where we are, which is what brings us alive, which helps us recognize each other as not strangers or different, but as human beings. So, when I was younger, I used to spend time in the summers, I would spend a week or two on a small lake in the Adirondacks. And I would get up early because I'm a morning person. And I would look out on that lake and I'd have coffee. And the other side of the lake, which is like a half a mile away, was all woods and beachfront, stone kind of beach, and in the morning light, it looked so mystical. It looked so inviting. And, by the third morning, I said, I've got to go over there. So I got in a rowboat with my coffee and I rowed over there. And as I got over there and beached the boat on the stone, and then I sat on the stone, well, of course, I looked back at where I had started, and now that looked mystical. And I said, oh, I get it. I get it. And this brings up the glare that seduces us away. If I'm walking toward a field and the same thing in the top of the hill, it's a sunny day and it's beautiful and there's this beautiful sheen on the hill and it just looks like, oh my God, that's a hill that must have been in Eden. And I walk over there, but this always happens because once we get closer, now things get real. Now, as I approach the hill, I notice that there's a tree stump that has a nest of hornets in it. And on the other side of the hill is a carcass of a dead deer. And to the left is an old broken fence that's filled with brambles. And it's not like, oh, that's a disappointment. It's just that as we get closer to everything, it gets more real. And we, unless we give attention, we have no chance of loving what is real.
Mark, I think also though, like what you were saying earlier about the balance, because as living beings that have physical bodies that need to survive, we need to have a balance between understanding that we have a future and being in the present moment. I was speaking with a guy at a meditation class the other day, and he noticed that since he's been meditating for the last 3 years, he lost his job, and it's been like 6 months, and he hasn't done anything to find a job. And he said, I don't feel any concern to get a job, but I know that if I don't take any steps to get one, soon I won't have a home. And so it was almost like he was experiencing this numbness of only being in the present.
Well, I think this is the thing, that being in the present, for me, doesn't mean that we remove ourselves from the stream of life. It means that we participate in the stream of life and we move at the pace of what is real. What does that mean? That means that when my head and my heart and my body move at the same pace, they're all aligned, like the tumblers in some mystical lock, I'm moving at the pace of what is real and everything opens up. And so I can move through the day knowing that, looking forward to having our conversation, but yet when I find myself being pulled ahead of where I am, I slow down. So it's not about saying, oh, there is no future, there is no past. It's about not moving so fast that everything's blurry and not moving so slow that you're not moving. And that's different for everybody. And of course, being human, I talk about that. Do I move too fast? Of course I do. Do I stall sometimes? Of course I do. Because this is what it is to be human. So I really do, for me, I believe in being engaged in the world, of being in the world. And being in the moment doesn't mean, I think at times we've made a cartoon out of that, as if, okay, we don't have to worry about anything else. We can drop everything and not think about a future or a past or a responsibility. And that's not, I think that being in the moment for me has been in the same way that a tree, as it grows, its roots grow deeper into the ground, and at the same time, its branches and shoots grow farther toward the sky. And being in the moment allows us, like a tree, to both root and branch more deeply into the life we're given.
Right now, we are speaking with Mark Nepo. He is the author of the New York Times bestselling book, The Book of Awakening. We're also talking today about his latest book, The Way Under the Way. and he's the author of many, many books. This is Synchronicity, talk radio for your mind, body, and soul. Mark Nepo is coming to Vancouver. He's going to be at Unity of Vancouver on March 24th and 25th of 2017. He'll also be at Pine Manor in Southern California, April 7th through 9th of this year. And Mark, I'm wondering what the workshops will be here in Vancouver.
Yeah, so the workshops are going to be based on the new book, The One Life We're Given, and some of the lessons that have come from the poems, which are real teachers for me. But what I really view these opportunities for me, all the workshops and retreats that I'm blessed to be able to give, they're an opportunity to open up a heart space that we can enter together, but through which I hope to help introduce people to their own gifts and their own wisdom, and to the depth of their own stories. So, what we will do through the time that we have is, I will open up themes and using stories and metaphors, just as we've been talking. And then we'll have conversation as a group, but then I will offer people the opportunity to meditate, journal, and be in conversation to find out where these things live in their own lives. So we will follow that kind of cycle where, I'll open up a theme with stories or metaphors or personal, examples from my own life and other people's lives. And then we'll see where that lives in our own lives through this concentric kind of listening, through meditation, journaling, being in small dyads, and then coming together as a larger group. And that'll be the rhythm through which we go through this. And, it's really a wonderful, I have to say, people have gathered like this forever. This is how it looks in our time. But people have always, from the beginning of time, there has been a lineage of people pausing in the rigors of surviving to get together and say, what happened? What's going on? So in a way, we're comparing notes about what it is to be here because, no one knows how to do this. And that's a beautiful, actually, it's a beautiful thing that, with the purpose of wisdom is not so that we shortcut the journey. It's to support us because every generation has to embody the journey all over again.
So when I read the title, The One Life We're Given, Finding the Wisdom That Waits in Your Heart, I kind of feel like when I'm searching for wisdom, I'm also searching for answers. But when I hear you speak, it doesn't sound like the same like the same thing.
Yeah, so let me talk about it as I experience it. So again, I think in the outer, in the world of circumstance, in the world of survival, there are answers. There's the degree at which, water freezes. There are, when we go into the supermarket and we, pick up things, we need to know which things are cleaning, where's the cleaning aisle, and you don't eat the things in the cleaning aisle because they're poisonous. So there are things where we need answers, and but in order to thrive, now questions take over, and there are no answers. Rather, questions are like doorways that you ask a question like you would open a door that you would want to walk through with someone. You swing a question like you would a lantern to help you see in the dark. There's a great line in the Talmud that says, why ruin a perfectly good question with an answer? And so I've come to understand that the things that matter most don't have answers. That the questions are thresholds to walking together and comparing and finding out. So, and let's also talk about the fact that when I talk about the wisdom that waits in your heart, and I had a friend who, as I was finishing the book, said, well, the wisdom is, in your heart. Why do you have to find it? And, you know, and it's because it's dormant until it's just like the seed that's in the ground, the peony, the flower, the rose. It's in the seed, but it doesn't manifest until it breaks ground. And by living the one life we're given, by being fully present, by being engaged, by giving attention and recognizing and accepting each other and helping each other, that seed of wisdom that waits in our heart starts to break ground and comes into the world. Another image that and again, for me, I retrieve this material more than that I created out of nothing. It comes out of relationship with the unknown, and then they become my teachers that I have to spend time with them to understand what they mean. So there's one in the new book that's a very powerful metaphor for me, and it's of a match that you would, strike and light a fire with, a wooden match where the tip is phosphorus. Now, we all know that that flame is dormant in the tip of that match, but it won't show itself or be useful until it strikes against a surface. And so, likewise, every soul on earth is like that match. And our gifts are dormant until we strike our gifts against the needs of the world. And then we give off light and warmth. Then we give off light and warmth. And so again, we are asked to be fully present and engage ourselves in the world so that we can show our light and share our gifts.
Thank you, Mark. Again, we are speaking with Mark Nepo. You can find him at marknepo.com or 3intentions.com. And he's going to be coming to Vancouver, Unity of Vancouver, on March 24th and 25th of 2017, as well as Pine Manor in Southern California in April. And you can find more information about that at marknepo.com. Mark, I'm curious about the idea of, I guess it would be life purpose, but I feel like so many of us, myself included, are trying to strike a balance between surviving in this world, which is mainly making money, and serving in a way that fills our hearts and provides an opportunity to thrive. Like it seems like a really, it's a struggle for me.
Well, it's a struggle for everyone. And we sometimes were blessed, like I am at this point in my life, that what I do to survive and thrive are, at least for now, the same thing. But it wasn't always that way. I wasn't always able to write full time or teach full time. And, there are, William Carlos Williams, who was one of the great fathers of modern poetry, American poetry in the last century. He became a pediatrician. And he became a pediatrician because he didn't want his work, his art, his poetry to have to rely on itself to feed him and his family. And he wanted to do something that would keep him close to life and death. So he said, well, I'll become a pediatrician. And so he became a pediatrician, and he had his typewriter, back then it was a typewriter, bolted to a movable arm to his desk. And he would have paper in there where he would be working on poems, and boom, someone would call, he'd have to deliver a baby. And he'd just swing the typewriter out of the way, and he'd go deliver the baby, and he'd come back with this amazing freshness of life and pick up the typewriter and say, oh, where was I? So, we're all challenged. And I also think that, Stanley Kunitz, who died maybe 10 years ago, was an amazing poet. And Stanley Kunitz, when young poets would ask him, what should I do? I want to be a poet. He would say, well, make sure you also devote yourself to something else so that life is always teaching you and informing you. So I think that, we're all challenged to keep the flame of what we love alive and to let everything in, to let everything teach us, to let everything, you know, move move through us. But I would also let it back up a little bit, and I would say that when we talk about our life's purpose, you know, I think that I would offer that the soul wants only like a fire to burn bright. It really doesn't matter it doesn't really care what you feed it. So our heart wants nothing but to be as fully alive as possible. And the purpose of our dreams and our goals and our ambitions, they're kindling for the fire of aliveness. We tend also in our modern world to hold on to our dreams and ambitions too tightly so that we don't let them evolve or burn up so that they can lead us to what it is that might bring us alive that we can't foresee. So with that in mind, I would offer that the soul's awakening is our career. Where it takes place is our occupation. The soul's awakening is our career, but where it takes place is our occupation. And so it can shift over a lifetime. What brings me alive 10 years ago may not be what brings me alive today. And to allow ourselves to keep growing and changing. So let me tell you a story about soul's purpose. And this is a story of a monk in Japan in the 1600s by the name of Tetsugen. And Tetsugen's call at an early age, at that time, the talks of Buddha, the teachings of Buddha, were not yet translated into Japanese. And he wanted to be the one to translate them. He felt like he was brought here to translate Buddha's wisdom into Japanese. So he went about beginning to translate the talks of Buddha. And he had a friend who was an artist who he enlisted him to do woodcuts. And so they were going to plan to publish this beautiful hardbound edition of Buddha's talks in Japanese. And at the same time, they didn't have any money, so they were begging alms for this purpose. And after 10 years, they had almost enough money, and he had translated enough. And at that time, in the part of Japan where he grew up, they had a terrible flood, much like Katrina in New Orleans. And so he gave all the money he had saved to help the people where he grew up. And he went back to continue translating more of Buddha's talks. And then they started again to beg alms. And so after another 7 or 8 years, they had almost enough money again. And this time, somewhere else in Japan, there was a famine. And now, having been awakened to the suffering of the people where he grew up, he said, well, I didn't grow up with these people, but they still need help just the same. And he gave the money away again. And after 25 years, Tetsugen finally published the talks of Buddha in Japanese. And today, there is a first edition of that book in a museum in Kyoto. And under it, there is a plaque that reads, Tetsugen published 3 versions of the holy text in his lifetime. Only one is visible. And so, while his dream and his ambition was to translate the holy texts of Buddha, his calling and his purpose was to embody them. And he could not have foreseen what he was being called to do, but he followed his heart and he found his true calling and still translated the talks of Buddha. So we never know when we're working toward. It's important. So this is a good example. Like we don't have to like, oh well, since ambition and striving is really not all that important, then we don't do anything. Well, no, it's not. It's not just the reverse. It's that we do need dreams and goals and ambitions to bring us more deeply into life, but we have to be open humbly to the fact that they may in themselves be leading us to work that we can't even imagine. But right now, that's as far as we can see. So we need to devote ourselves to that, but be ready for when it burns itself up as kindling for what we're really called to do.
So, how long did it take you to figure all this out, Mark?
Oh, my whole life. I'm just still figuring it out. I'm still figuring it out. And I think that the most important thing is to admit that we really don't know anything. Then we can begin a real journey together. And the great purpose of love and suffering is for us to realize that we are each other. That's one of the things that's very difficult. There have been, in our time right now in America, we are I think all around the world this is happening, but we're in a time of great polarization where we seem to think that, all the people who voted for Trump and all the people who voted for Hillary, we all seem to think that we're so far apart. And in some level, we are. But there is no they. We are they. We are each other. And only when we suffer and through great love and great risk and great heart do we remember and realize, oh, we bleed the same, we hurt the same, we really want the same things. And we are, on this journey of having to rediscover that, which comes and goes in cycles. There's a great story about, which I use in one of my books, about two monks who have studied long and hard, and they're going to climb a mountain because at the top of the mountain, they're going to meet Buddha. And it could be anybody. It could be Jesus. It could be Moses. It could be any tradition. So halfway up the mountain, one of the two monks breaks his leg. And they stay overnight. They camp on the side of the mountain. And in the morning, the other monk is getting ready to continue when he realizes that the monk who broke his leg isn't doing well. He's got a fever, and it's clear it's not as simple. He can't just leave him. So what is he going to do? And so this is a real metaphor, because what it tells us is whoever you are and whatever age you live in, if you would leave your wounded other to keep your appointment at the top of the mountain, then when there are more people who would do that than help their other, we have an age of cruelty. When there are more people who would forego their appointment at the top of the mountain and realize that helping each other where we are is the summit, then we have an age of compassion. And it doesn't matter what your appointment is. If your appointment is to become a millionaire, or out of fear to avoid poverty, or whatever it might be, or a holy mission like to meet God, or to become a minister, or whatever it might be, And every day we are faced, each of us, with this choice. Are we going to keep going up the mountain? Or are we going to, or as love teaches us, that the summit is wherever we stop to take care of each other. And we're in a great struggle right now as a society of trying to discern, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And it's not something, this is below politics. And this is something that each person has to come to of their own, from their own heart space. And that's our life's purpose.
It's interesting, Mark. I read about a study that was done, I believe it was with priests or student priests, where they had a class or an appointment that they had to get to within, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes. And then was another group that had plenty of time. They had an hour before they had to get to their class. They had a man who was hurt on the side of the road to see the reaction, and it was pretty much every priest that had to be at their place at their appointment in a short amount of time walked past him, but the ones who had plenty of time stopped and helped. And it's something to do with the way that our brains get so focused on the goal that we start to ignore everything else. So even if aspiring priests can do that, who are obviously there wanting to do the will of God, how do mortals like the rest of us?
Well, because, and this is the beauty of the journey, the flawed journey of being human.
Mm-hmm.
Because unlike any other creature, we have the capacity to change course, make amends, and go back. We have the capacity because we have the capacity to say, what does it mean to have plenty of time? We have the capacity to say, oh, I just walked by. I can go back. I can say I'm sorry. I can change course. And so in so many ways, the spiritual practice is what I call a practice of return. Because I don't believe that in a permanent state of enlightenment. I believe that, we remember and we forget, and we help and then we drop things, and then we break things and then we mend them, and we're clear and then we're not. And so I think that everybody has to develop their own very personal practice of return so that when we do walk by, we can say, wait a minute, and turn around and not get shrunken by the sense that we don't have plenty of time. Because where are we going? I had a friend who passed away, and there was a memorial service for him at a church that he attended here in town, and he was really beloved, and packed place. And there was a young a new minister at this church, and she, when it got time for people to come up and share whatever stories they might have, she got up and was saying, well, I know there's so much everybody wants to share, but we don't, we only have 15 or 20 minutes here. So we ask everybody to be mindful of time. And I don't feel like, not because she was young, but I just sensed she hadn't experienced enough to realize, where are we going? This is what a place, any denomination, this is what a church was built for people to gather in times of deep love and deep loss. And where are we going? Just to close it up and be empty in the dark and put a lock on it by a certain time? So we all, and I'm not saying, bringing this example to blame this person, because we all slip into this, as the study you said shows. But we all have to be devoted to restoring our humanity when we put it down.
Beautiful. Well, I wish that we could talk all day about this. And speaking of time, we do need to start wrapping up for the radio interview. I'm wondering. We'll talk again about You're coming to Unity of Vancouver on March 24th and 25th of 2017, and you'll be in Southern California at Pine Manor April 7th through 9th. And if you're interested in attending the workshops or the evening with Mark Nepo, you can go to his website, marknepo.com. And I don't want to rush you off. I'm wondering what else you want to add to this conversation.
Yeah, so I want to add just a couple of things. One is that there's an extra special treat about the workshop in Vancouver. Is I have a dear friend who's actually local in Vancouver and the Victoria Island area, Margot McLaughlin, and she's going to assist me for the weekend, and she is a phenomenal storyteller and a remarkable person. So there'll be a double treat there to have Margot with us for the weekend. And I want to read a poem, given what we just talked about. That's also from The Way Under the Way, as a way to kind of bring us out of our conversation. And it's called The Appointment. And it's also, I use it in 7,000 Ways to Listen in a chapter there too. What if on the first sunny day on your way to work, a colorful bird sweeps in front of you down a street you've never heard of? You might pause and smile, a sweet beginning to your day. Or you might step into that street and realize there are many ways to work. You might sense the bird knows something you don't and wander after. You might hesitate when the bird turns down an alley, for now there is attention. Is what the bird knows worth being late? You might go another block or two thinking you can have it both ways, but soon you arrive at the edge of all your plans. Now the bird circles back for you, and you must decide which appointment you were born to keep. And sometimes it's following the bird, and sometimes it's keeping the appointment you already had. That we're always asked, and I think this is a quiet courage that is asked of all of us. We're asked to return. See, the moment is a threshold. When we talk about being in the moment, it's not just to be in the moment. The moment is a doorway. It's like, in science fiction, it would be like a wormhole or something. It's the doorway to eternity. It's the doorway. It's only through bringing all of who we are to the moment that we're in that the moment that touches every other moment opens up. And so no one can live there forever. It's like, Icarus flying too close to the sun and his wings of wax melted in Greek mythology. But we can go, we are brought there by great love and suffering, and we can go there through our sincerity and our authenticity and our kindness. And no one can stay in that moment, the opening of that moment, forever. So we're thrown back into the waves of life and surviving in the weather of circumstance. And that's why we need to return again and again and again. And it's being human is a messy, magnificent journey. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Thank you so much. We've been speaking with Mark Nepo. This is Synchronicity Talk Radio for your mind, body, and soul. Mark is coming to Unity of Vancouver on March 24th and 25th, and you can find more information about everything he does, as well as that workshop, at marknepo.com. Thank you so much for your time and for giving your gifts and shining your light on the world. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for letting me be a part of your good work here.
And thank you for listening and for spending this time with us. I want to send you lots of love. Be well. Namaste.